Okay. So first of all, just a shameless plug. We're a veteran-owned organization with over 15 years in security. We're passionate about helping small businesses and local governments achieve their business goals. We understand small business and local government needs, and we understand compliance requirements like PCI, HIPAA, DFARS, SC 800-171, GBA. Sarbanes-Oxley. We offer different cybersecurity services, and we have a select number of products. If you sense I'm a little bit nervous, this is my first time in doing this puppy. And for some reason, what is going on? Okay. Zoom slideshow. Bear with me a minute. Screen. I'm gonna. For some reason, my big screen is not behaving. So I'm going to switch it over a little bit. So there's a gentleman, and hopefully everybody can see this. I think I've got you on the right screen.
Yeah, we're looking at your PowerPoint screen, Mike.
Okay. Okay. So there's a gentleman many years ago, even though my sons would probably disagree with me, he was before my time, but he talked a lot about the art of war. And if you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. If you know yourself but not the enemy, for every victory gained, you'll also suffer defeat. If you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle. That is so apropos for what we're dealing with today in this open source intelligence discussion we're going to have. So hopefully I'll be able to educate you and give you some ideas. I'll be upfront with you. I'm not going to go deep down technically, but I think it's important to set the stage. A normal OSINT course would take around 18 to 20, between 18 and 24 hours to go through all the material. So I'm going to give you a flavor and the uses, and hopefully that will help you get started, and you certainly will be able to come back and talk with me later after this presentation. Dang. Okay, so let's talk about what we're going to cover through the agenda. We're going to talk about what is OSINT, types of resources, use of OSINT, and we're going to talk about it from the standpoint of competitive analysis between companies, defensive countermeasures, and how to use it offensively as well. And we're going to go through a business analysis and a user analysis and then summarize. So if you have any questions, I think you have control. Let's see. Okay, Brad, are you okay yet? I see you put down, it sounds like alien noises. So hopefully I'm still not sounding like an alien. Okay.
Hey, Mike, I'm not sure the chat's on for everyone, but the questions are.
I see those now. I just found them.
Okay.
So apologize for any inconvenience. We're all kind of it's a brave new world for most of us. I've done regular Zoom presentations, but not an interactive webinar. So bear with us. I've got your question pane up there. So if you have a question, go ahead and enter a question, and I'll try to keep up and keep you answered. My goal is not to spend 90 minutes lecturing you. I really enjoy the interaction. And those of you who have seen me in person know that I'm one of those guys that walks around the room and waves and shouts and yells and does all kinds of performance stuff. Kind of hard to do that sitting remotely in front of a camera, but we'll get through it. So to start out with, OSINT stands for Open Source Intelligence. And this brings with it a caveat that OSINT sources have to be legally accessible by the public without breaching any copyright or privacy laws. I remember in other presentations I've given and workshops I've given on OSINT, the questions come up, well, isn't that illegal? Well, actually it's not. We're just going out, just like we went down to the library and picked up a bunch of newspapers and started reading the newspapers to see what we could see about topics of interest. Okay, so you'd go down to the corner library and pick up newspapers, read the newspapers and magazines and whatnot, and conduct an analysis. Well, that's basically what we're doing with OSINT, except now we have the entire internet web before us. There are 4 categories of OSINT: open source data, open source information, and that open source information includes something like gray literature. So open source information in and of itself is like going out to the blogs and things like that, where basically you have data that's been massaged or processed, if you will, to turn it into something more than just a meaningless stream of numbers. We've given it context. And then you have open source intelligence, where you've given it yet another dimension, and maybe put it together with some threat intelligence feed. And then finally, this one that's most reliable is the validated OSINT, where somebody has actually gone out and made sure that everything was true. It's kind of like the fact checking we now see on Facebook. You've seen those little things, and you remember hearing news reports of some of the intelligence issues that we've heard during the elections. Well, that wasn't validated intelligence. No, the intelligence community had not come to agreement that that was real. So that when it's real, that's when it becomes validated. So kind of taking you back to basic information systems theory, data, information, and knowledge. Data, as we saw, a set of facts describing something without further explanation or analysis. So I could give you 200, 400, 600, well, that's data. Information, data that has been interpreted properly to give a useful meaning within a specific context. The information would be, that's a series of numbers, 200, 400, and 600, that is going as an increment of 200, which means that I can now take that information and perhaps use it as a forecasting tool to say, well, I would expect the next point to be 800. And then knowledge, where we've combined information, experience, and insight to what has been learned or inferred. And so typically that means we brought in additional sources, we've corroborated those sources together, and now we have something that we can really act upon. the different OSINT types. There's the internet at large. Then we have our traditional mass media, the CNNs of the world, Fox News, whatever. The specialized journals, academic publications and company publications. The ISSA journal, for example, would be a type of OSINT. Photos and videos, including the metadata. And what is the metadata? So that's the time and place, location, if you will, maybe the GPS coordinates of where that photo was taken. And then geospatial information, your Google Maps or plotted out, shall we say, a site plan for a building. So those are the types of data and information that we're dealing with. So who are the consumers of OSINT? Well, just about everybody, frankly. International organizations, government, law enforcement, education, private industry, individuals. We all have our fingers in this pie, and we're all trying to go out and find data or find data and information, put it together so that we can make some judgment calls on what we need to do next. And that's what we're going to talk about in this. So why use OSINT? Well, we want to obtain useful intelligence about an organization targeted in an attack by white hat pen testers or black hat hackers. So the first thing, if you're involved in pen testing or even in vulnerability assessments, the first thing you need to do is to find out as much as you can about your target. Who is that company? What does MedCost do? What does CyberHive Security do? We want to find out everything we can about the company, the key actors, the reputation of the company, any little tidbit we can find that gives us a better position to either make a decision as to whether we're going to partner with that company. Maybe the risk is just too great, or maybe we're going to use it to attack that company because it's a competitor and they have some little widget that we'd love to get our hands on the plans for. So maybe we won't replicate it, but we'll try to use the knowledge we gain in our analysis to build a better widget. We might use OSINT if we're in law enforcement to protect citizens from abuse, sexual violence, identity theft, and other crimes. So one of the things that we might want to find out is, why did that breach happen? What was different about that company in the way it protected the data of that person? Monitor and tracking criminal networks. Law enforcement does a lot of this. We pick up the papers every day and hear about a takedown of another website. There was just one today or yesterday where the two Chinese nationals were arrested for hacking a number of sites. How did they get to that conclusion? How did they draw that conclusion where they had enough information to arrest them? Well, they went out and probably found by happenstance that there was some anomalous activity going on a particular network, and they tracked it down and found these two individuals. If we're talking about it from a business standpoint, we want to investigate new markets, monitor what our competitors are doing, or plan marketing activities. If we find that our competitor is going after the mid-market, maybe we feel that there's more opportunity to be had in the small businesses, for example, or maybe we want to find out what the competitor is doing relative to COVID. Are they spinning it? Can we spin it better to get better business? fighting against data leakage and helping build effective cyber risk management policies. We ourselves want to go out and take a look at our employees. Are our employees sending the wrong message or sending too much of a message on the internet? Can we go out there and find our employees' email addresses, particularly email addresses of our executives, that can then be used to spoof those addresses and send a phishing attack against us, and end up getting a Trojan put on one of our desktops inside the network and exfiltrate sensitive data out to the internet. And then if we're in the industrial base, defense industrial base businesses, we need to have an effective situational awareness program so that we can meet the requirements of this new standard that's emerging, the CMMI framework. All of these things are reasons for using OSINT. And in each and every case, this is not somebody sending in a spy. This is somebody sending an analyst to the desk and having them go forward, collecting data, analyzing the data, and coming up with conclusions that are passed on up the line that can be used for addressing the needs of the day. There's a big concern in that area on protecting the supply chain, and we've got historical evidence to support why we need to do that. So let's kind of break this down a little bit. Are there organizations you compete with that you want to know more about? Who are the stakeholders of those companies? So if you're, I don't know, Diversified Technology, which is an electric company, an electric contracting company over in Rural Hall, Diversified Technology, I'm sorry, and they want to know if there's something that we need to worry about from Pike Electric, for example. So somebody goes out for working for Diversified Electrical Technology and takes a look at Pike Electric and gets an idea of what they're doing, who their customers are, what kind of reputation do they have. Is there something that we can do to level the playing field? What about the defensive measures? What gets said on the internet stays on the internet. So how many times have you had to counsel one of your employees or a friend of yours, a coworker, that, hey, you need to really chill it on Facebook. You're causing an issue for our company's reputation. Each of us should have some loyalty to our employer. We know that that's becoming less and less these days, but nonetheless, what we say on Facebook or LinkedIn or just in a matter of course of our interaction with others may become an embarrassment. We might let the cat out of the bag on a major product announcement that's coming down. There was a lawsuit here in not a lawsuit, but an investigation here in North Carolina not too long ago over one of our U.S. senators who was accused of having insider knowledge about trading, in particular about some of the COVID-19 activities, and he sold a bundle of stock before the bottom fell out. So that insider information was probably picked up through, perfectly legitimately because of his station in office, but he used it in the wrong way. What can your adversaries learn about you? Who to target in your company? Who are your trusted partners? Who are your customers? What do you have of value? Wouldn't your competitors like to know or like to have access to your client list so they could go out and undersell you? All of that is legitimate use of OSINT, where this information is being harvested off the internet. It's not being protected in any way. It's definitely public information, but it's being used in a way that puts you at a competitive advantage. But what you need to make sure that what you can find about them, make sure they can't find the same thing out about you, because they're using the same tools that you are to learn about you. The use that we most often hear about is through offensive activities. Call it reconnaissance, call it intelligence gathering, it's all the same. And the hackers are very good at this. If you're in a pen testing role, a white hat pen testing role, you're probably pretty good at it too, or you should be. You want to do a lot, you probably do a lot subconsciously. In my case, when I'm going out on an interview with a prospective customer or a discussion with a prospective customer, first thing I do is check out their website. I want to know what they market, because my pitch has to resonate with them. It doesn't do me any good if I go to Biscuitville wanting to sell medical equipment. I'm not going to get very far. I should have known that Biscuitville has nothing to do with medical equipment before I stepped through the door. Look for who I know that works there on LinkedIn. So find the company on LinkedIn. What about my connection list? Is there, how many of my connections work for that company? Can I send out a couple of questions and get some better understanding of what the culture is there at the company? Nothing, nothing shady, just legitimate questions of, hey, what's it like there? Who's in charge of this? Who's in charge of that? What kind of processes are they using? Google the organization and see what its reputation is. There's a whole realm of stuff to go over called Google Dorks. There's basically adding keywords to your Google searches to get better information. And why are you doing all this? Because you want to know everything you can about your target, whether it's an adversary, customer, partner, or employer. And in this case, if we're talking strictly about offense, we're talking about the white hat trying to find chinks in the armor, or the hacker trying to find chinks in the armor as well, so that they can get in and bring the organization to its knees. So let's take a quick look at where OSINT falls into the penetration testing methodology. I kind of cobbled together, just like I do with recipes. I take a couple of recipes and put them together to try to come out with something better. Too often, even in penetration tests, we forget the most critical point, and that's scoping. What are the boundaries? Because the boundaries are going to drive what kind of information we need to gather and what the goal of that attack is going to be. Maybe it's to exfiltrate data. Maybe it's to own the server. Who knows? But whatever that scope is, you're going to want to tune your research to meet those goals. And then you have the actual reconnaissance, identifying the types of sources of data you need, gathering the data or the info, and then that leads you into the scan portion where you design the scans, run the scans, identify the exploits. Once you've identified the exploits, you run them. I mean, that's where that's the old I own your server, game over kind of thing. Or I was able to remove sensitive data from one of your servers, and then document results and findings. And if, typically if you're a white hat hacker, that's the end of it. You hand over the report to the people, and whatever you have for an agreement to follow on, you do that. If you're a hacker, typically you want to maintain access, because you got away with it once. Let's make it easy on ourselves. Let's kind of keep an agent running on one of those servers that I can get back to through my command and control network, and be able to maintain access into the network. In OSINT, like everything else, there are a number of different resources. We're going to talk pretty heavily about the OSINT framework today. There's also inteltechniques.com, which has OSINT training and resources, OSINTcurio.us, which is a general resources compendium. There was a specific, just like some of the focused, like Beef and things like that, that are Linux engines meant to go out and run penetration tests against web servers. There was something called Buscador Investigative Operating System, which was a specialized release of Linux that was built specifically for OSINT. That's no longer supported. There's a book that's just come out. I've actually ordered a copy of it from my library, called Open Source Intelligence Techniques. And if you're interested in building your own OSINT virtual machine, I encourage you to pick up a copy of this book. I think it's about 35 bucks or something, but it should have a lot of other good stuff. Kali Linux, of course, we know about. That's the general, what I'm going to call the general penetration testing virtual machine. It's a rewrite basically of the old Backtrack. And then there's a couple of books that I've listed here. Open Source Intelligence Methods and Tools, which I used a lot in preparing this presentation. And then here's the author of the Open Source Intelligence Techniques. So I encourage you to take a look at some of those. Kali Linux, of course, we talked about it. So let's talk a little bit about Kali Linux. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with it. Essentially, it's a Linux distribution that you can use. If you're running Windows 10, which most of you probably are at this point, there is a specific Linux-like release for Windows where they're using the Windows operating system kernel to have a Linux shell on top of it. It's called the Windows subsystem for Linux. Well, you can apparently get Kali Linux to run on top of that. Now, I'll guarantee you that if you talk to a purist, they're going to choke on that suggestion. So the usual technique that everybody follows is get a VM like VMware or VirtualBox. VirtualBox from Oracle is free, works pretty well. In fact, I kind of like VirtualBox over VMware because while VirtualBox is open source, the documentation seems to be a lot better, and there's also a lot of people that use it, so it's easy to find some support. You can even find a Kali Linux version for Raspberry Pi. So I know a lot of people, Kali, isn't that an Indian goddess? Well, actually, it's not. Just like everything else, so many other things in our technology world. It stands for Kernel Auditing Linux, not necessarily Kali the goddess. And then there's also release of Kali, which called NetHunter, which will run on selected Android devices. So just some notes. I'm thinking that we'll be able to make these slides available to you. I'm going to make sure that ISSA has a copy of them because I have hot links in you could use to get out some of these resources. So let's get down to OSINT. So the mission, learn about the target undetected. The more they know about us, the more vulnerable we are. As defenders, we need to use OSINT to determine exposure. And we want to, as attackers, we want to know the architecture, environment, and users to formulate an attack plan. So OSINT is that legal public body of knowledge that tells the world who we are, what we do, how we do it, how we're configured, what our exposures, vulnerabilities may be. And once again, we're getting all this information off the public internet and through other documents that are publicly available. At this point in time, we have not executed an attack against the organization. All we're doing is gathering breadcrumbs. So what is the end game? Well, we want to make, for a hacker, we want to have attacks against our targets that lead to business disruption. We also want to, some hackers are in the market to capture information that they can later sell on the dark web. Social engineering is another way that we use OSINT. We go out and we scrub the web and we find email addresses of key individuals in an organization. Then we use those email addresses to spoof them for phishing attacks. Many sources of data say that the typical attack today, 90% of the time, is through email, and that's scary. And how do they know what email addresses to try? Well, somebody's left their contact information for the office out on the internet, or somebody's using office email to conduct their private business, and so it gets harvested someplace because they put in their business address out on a website that has another purpose in mind, which is selling the email addresses it collects to the highest bidder. We want to disrupt that business through causing a breach of trust. So if we can attack that business and cause it to have a data breach, it may lose its trust by the marketplace and end up going out of business. And then, just an aside, you often never really realize what the really good attackers are after until it's too late. So why do I stick that on the end of the end game? Because we need to keep in mind what they're after and protect those things, but at the same time be mindful that these guys are good. They have all the time in the world to accomplish their mission. We don't have all the time in the world. Legal implications, we've talked about this just briefly again. We're going after publicly available information, and the legal conundrum is what you do with the information, not how you get it. And tools optimize our search efforts. So here's our strategy. We're going to work through several tools to answer the following questions. We want to know what the product is, the location of the business, relationships, architecture and configuration, we can figure that out, and people. Possible areas of concern, email authentication and configuration, DNS configuration and security, bad reputation on the web, and evidence support technology and cybersecurity management, any economic information, and key people. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to look at Biscuitville today. And what we found, we went out to Dun & Bradstreet. I think I've got a slide of them. Jump down here to Dun & Bradstreet. Not sure. I don't know why. I cannot bring up that slide, so I apologize for this. See if we can do something here. If at first you don't succeed, so this is the Dun & Bradstreet. For those of you who are not familiar with Dun & Bradstreet, basically rules businesses creditworthy. Creditworthiness is one of their functions. And so anybody that has a business typically has registered with Dun & Bradstreet, or if they haven't initiated the contact, Dun & Bradstreet has hunted them down, because Dun & Bradstreet is kind of the go-to place to find out about the legitimacy of the business. If the business has a Dun & Bradstreet number, then it's a legitimate business. As BlueTeamAssess LLC, I have a Dun & Bradstreet number. Don't have a credit worthiness worth a flip, but nonetheless, I have a Dun & Bradstreet number, and I need that to be able to get on government contracts. So it is, basically a very exhaustive database of businesses located and operating in the United States. In the case of Biscuitville, what I found of interest was, first of all, I found that Dun & Bradstreet treats each of the locations as its own entity. So you can see that because here is Biscuitville located as a parent, and then you see location type independent. So this, somebody goes to Biscuitville, says, I want to franchise the name, and Biscuitville says, okay, here you are, give me 20 to 30 grand to buy in, because we're going to give you all kinds of good marketing stuff and everything. And you have your own D&B number, and you can see here that this particular report also lists out the estimated sales revenue. The top one in the list is the headquarters in Greensboro, and it's estimated, what its estimated sales revenue is. So why is Dun & Bradstreet important? I want to get a feel for what kind of information or what kind of product it has. What's its physical, what's its financial strength? Remember, I might be using this for offensive or defensive purposes. I'll go here to find out whether I think it's worthwhile to partner with Biscuitville based on the revenue that they've been reporting to Dun & Bradstreet, or that Dun & Bradstreet's figured out they're making. So now I'm going to go from, no, it's not going to do it. So let me reduce that back. Okay, so the next thing is we're going to go, and I've actually already taken a shot at this. So Google shows the URL as https://biscuitville.com. So I've taken the liberty of taking a screenshot. This is kind of what Biscuitville is all about. That nice triple berry blast muffin. Well, it doesn't look much like a biscuit, but there's certainly biscuits here. Anyway, just point of trivia, as I was doing research on Biscuitville, its first official name was actually Pizzaville. I don't know, I guess I figured that they were making more money off of biscuits than pizzas, but whatever. We now know them as Biscuitville. And if I go out on to their website, and let's drag over here. So I'm not sure which city that's in, but anyway, I have some Biscuitvilles out here with me. It's probably off of something close to me. I didn't realize I had a Martin Luther King drive and that close to me. But menu local partners, so we can see who its local partners are, what kind of eggs they're using, Springer Mountain Farms chicken, which is a good thing. I love Springer Mountain Farms chicken. But the point that here is that you're getting intelligence over its supply, some information about its supply chain. If you wanted to do harm against Biscuitville, you'd probably go after one of these suppliers. Bill Gates did that back in the 90s. He went after a company called Netscape. And what he did was he made agreements with the computer manufacturers of that time, the desktop computer manufacturers of that time, and said, hey, if you're selling your computers with Netscape on it, I'm not going to give you the competitive pricing for my operating system. So you can use supply chain information to inflict damage against a competitor. Our story might give you some hints on how Biscuitville came about. Where you see Pizzaville's 1978, they had all of 8 Biscuitvilles open and just kept growing and growing and growing. So again, you can go out to the website, and a lot of times you can find some pretty decent information on how you can, how you can inflict damage, or also how you can get business. Maybe you think you can do a better job than Palmetto cheese, pimento cheese. So maybe you have a better widget of pimento cheese. So go ahead and market that. And the point is that this intelligence information you're getting can be used both ways. Go on to LinkedIn. So why would I want to go to LinkedIn to look at Biscuitville? Well, on its Biscuitville website, it doesn't tell me a whole lot about who's working there. I want to get people, I want to get email addresses, I want to get contact information, because I want to do some social engineering. So I'm going to go to LinkedIn, and should have LinkedIn coming up here. We're going to see how many people I owe messages to. Bring LinkedIn over here. Biscuitville Fresh Southern. So pretty popular, has 1,902 followers. Everybody's looking for a free biscuit. See all 338 employees on LinkedIn. Okay, well, looks like she could be pretty interesting to talk to. She's Vice President of People Excellence. So probably HR, wouldn't you say? So we'll go over to her. And okay, so far so good. Let's go to contact info. Well, doesn't seem to have her, but I can send, since I'm a premium member of LinkedIn, I can send her a message that will kind of have a kind of nag her if she doesn't respond to it. Tells me a little bit about her. Let's go check somebody else out. Biscuit Bill. Okay, who else was on the queue? Well, Chris Oldenburg, he's an IT director. He may not be, I'm being catty now, he may not be as astute about security issues. Let's see how careful he is. So we'll go contact info. No. Okay, so Chris Oldenburg, IT director. Let's keep that in mind. Let's go down here. And bear with me a minute here. We're going to go out to OSINT Framework. Oh, we still got I'm not having much. Let me go back. I'm whiling away the time. I went down a rabbit hole. I apologize for that. So the point is that you can find people, and we're going to go. We'll get down to where we use some other tools here. So another place we might want to look at is the Biscuitville Better Business Bureau. Why do I look at that? Again, this is business reputation, right? And we'll see what Biscuitville comes up with. And keep in mind, Businessville has a number of different organizations. And well, that's not good. Not BBB accredited. Well, no big deal, but it does, you know, if they were, or even if they weren't, it doesn't mean that they wouldn't have some complaints. So I kind of give that as a neutral. You know, the good news is they don't have any complaints. Bad news is they're not EBB accredited. And again, this is more because of just the way that I am and the way that I deal with things. So let's look at some other stuff about Biscuitville. So what we didn't like in the blogs. So we're going to go up here to Biscuitville, and this is blogsearchengine.org. I pulled this one off of one of the OSINT resources. We'll drag him over here. So all the places where Biscuitville has been mentioned. And it's kind of interesting because it doesn't seem to have a whole lot of notice in the blogs. There's its own website. There's Wikipedia. There's its own website again, its menu. There's an announcement about Reedsville opening up October 21st. There's a locator. Then it drops all the way down to 2014, 2015. So not a whole lot of juicy stuff out there. So the way this works is you can put any company name you want. Let's pick on Evelyn. I think that's her company name. Well, I'm not sure what it thought it was looking for in the first one, but here showing results for CyberHive security. And so that's its website, that's its LinkedIn, that's its about. That's actually CyberHive in England. That's the Facebook page. That's her tweet line. So not a whole lot on CyberHive security. Again, it's just something that you can use, you know, as a. So let's look at another thing. I'm still chasing after Biscuitville email addresses. I'm going to pick on another ISSA member here too. But first we'll go out and look specifically for Biscuitville addresses. Okay, so this is a search engine called hunter.io. Again, you can get to it through your OSINT tool framework. And we did see somebody identified as management here, Lisa Howard, customer service. So I would expect to see somebody like Lisa's name picked up off the internet. And then Kelly Hicks, looks like support is what they have her tagged as. We can go over here. We can send an email to Lisa. Same with Kelly. You can save this as a lead, if you will. So this is useful in building sales contacts if you're interested in that. And you can see where Lisa Howard showed up. Same with Kelly Hicks. So that was a couple of years ago. These looked at least might be live. I'm not sure about Kelly Hicks. She may well be a stale address. Here's an R. Johnson. (2018). That's not a whole lot of activity. And then you've got all your generic email addresses as well. So how would I use this? So if Lisa were showing up more currently, or Kelly or R. Johnson, I'd want to I'd probably go out on LinkedIn and poke around and see what they do, and try to send out an email to them or a message to them wanting to connect and establish a relationship. And then I'd try to, use them to receive an email, for example, that might have a present attached to it. So that would be one of the ways that I would work on that. Got a little bit more activity off of MedCost. I didn't see whether Jeff Hogue was on the line here. Doesn't look like Jeff's on. So let's take a look at MedCost. So yeah, there's some, so let's see what, okay, these aren't too bad. These are a couple of 2019s. Of course, the other thing I don't know, since this is a public tool, well, there's one that's Jay Clark at MedCost. It looks like he's been active as late as February 3rd, 2020. So considerably more activity with some of these email addresses. So this might be good emails to kind of build a phishing expedition, if you will, against these individuals, and tune the phishing email to something that would resonate with somebody who works at MedCost. So I definitely would want to use hunter.io for something like that. Okay, so I just had a comment from somebody who's familiar with some of the individuals of emails and made the statement that Mike was never an account manager. Again, this is somebody making judgment calls on what that person is. So, again, OSINT's like everything else. You need to go out and validate. Remember what we talked about early on, that we had OSINT, where we started putting some things together and it became intelligence. So the fact that this appears to where it's a viable email address, do we want to use that person as a target? That's when you have to go back and do some validation. Was that individual actually an account manager? Because if not, maybe it's somebody you don't want to waste their time with. So all of those types of things. This is what I'd call naked intelligence, unverified, unvalidated intelligence. It's one tool that said this person is an account manager. So what we need to do then to actually use that is to validate that information and see if our initial tactic needs to be tweaked. So thank you, Jason, for that feedback. Okay, so let's continue on going down here. So another thing that we want to take a look at is the OSINT framework itself, but I also want to talk about a couple of other things. One, and this goes to more of a validation of, is this a company you want to partner with? So many of you have heard me speak on a number of occasions about email authentication and security. And one of those is a company that I use is called Demarkian. And they have a little website out there that can get kind of interesting. We're going to throw a couple of domains up against it. Particularly want to go back to my friends at Biscuitville on this. So what I want to know is it possible that if I get into an arrangement with Biscuitville, that I might get some spoofed email from them? And so we're going to go to see whether they're protected or not. And I'm going to type in biscuitville.com and get rid of the that's not good. Your domain is not protected against abuse by phishers and spammers. So if I entertain a discussion with Biscuitville and they send me a response, I don't really know that it's coming from Biscuitville, is the way that I interpret that. And why not? Well, first of all, it doesn't have the protective framework, sender protective framework record. So anybody could be sending an email on their behalf. It doesn't have a DKIM record, which is the cryptographic key authentication. So if I did get an email from them, I wouldn't really have a cryptographic authentication for non-repudiation that the email actually came from them. And finally, not having a DMARC record, if somebody does spoof their address or their domain, then my mail agent on my side doesn't have any instructions on rejecting that particular attempt. So they fail on all three counts. I'm going to show you a comparison here. I'm going to use my domain. Hopefully I won't get it. Okay, and so here, well done, your domain is protected against abuse by phishers and spammers. So I have a valid SPF record and the policy is sufficiently strict. I've got a valid DMARC record and that will prevent abuse. The one here couldn't find a DCAM record associated with domain. Part of that has to do with the provider I use, but the good news is I've got these two working together. So if I send an email to somebody, I'm pretty sure that it's going to get through and not be thrown out for spam. And that's what happens with me. And I can tell you that by experience, that's been the case. So if that was enough, so let's bring MX Lookup's another place where you might want to. MX Lookup will show you a number of things. Let's go to biscuitville.com and see what MX Lookup has to say. This is MX Toolbox. So the good news is they have a DNS record published. Part of their problem is, and this happens with so many people, they're using Microsoft Office. I know what I would also be looking at with this particular company would be whether they have multi-factor authentication in place with email. There's been a big hullabaloo with Microsoft Office, particularly because multi-factor authentication through Azure was free, relatively so, because you don't have to add anything to it. But there have been quite a number of Microsoft email accounts compromised and used in phishing attacks. So I can find a lot of other things through here, the IP address of their mail server. I can check for blacklists. So things that you would normally associate with defensive mechanisms. As a person who might be entertaining a relationship, I would want to do a good due diligence to make sure that they're at least as secure as I am, because I don't want them being the weak chink in my armor. Okay, we talked about hunter.io. Let's keep on going down here. So the next range I want to talk about is DNS information. So why do I want to know about DNS information? Well, part of it is the fact that DNS spoofing is a big issue in a lot of places. So what I'm looking for is there some chance that maybe they could be, there'd be a chance that they're spoofed? Well, look at that. So I see 4 additional ones, just in the, remember, I'm not paying for any of this stuff, so I'm kind of doing on the cheap. But what I am seeing is I'm seeing 4 different domains that could very easily be used to spoof Biscuitville. for ads or what, phishing or whatever. And they're all coming from different IP addresses. So to me, there's a pretty good chance that I could probably send an email to somebody from biscuitville.com with a period there between the U and the I, and be able to use that for nefarious purposes. Jason asked, do I have SHODAN? Yeah, so the question came up, do I use SHODAN much? I've just started getting into using SHODAN. I actually have been building another, some tools that allow APIs between different tools, and SHODAN's one of those that has a free API. So my plan is to do that, but I'll be honest with you, I'm not all that expert in it at this point in time. So let's go up here. Another thing that people might be wondering about is, again, let's take a look at their security profile for their domain. I'll drop biscuitville.com back in there. This is a tool that VeriSign Labs puts out called DNSSEC Advertiser or Analyzer. So it's pretty neat, but it looks like I've got some places where I could play, again, because they haven't hardened their DNS. And if I don't like that one, I can go over here to a different one. So it is possible to get in here and to look at some, look for some opportunities to get into the middle of things and perhaps play in a man-in-the-middle attack on their email. So that would be something I might want to look at. This one. Okay, so let's kind of look at who has biscuitville.com. GoDaddy is their registrar. Looks like they've got things pretty well located or locked down. They can't pull a subterfuge and get their client moved. This was interesting. They have their website hosted at security.net. So if I wanted to carry out an attack on their website, I'd want to see what I could do over there. I might want to scan security.net and see if there's some vulnerabilities there. Maybe I could get into the website and put some graffiti up I'm not familiar with that company, so I don't know how strong they are, but that would be a possible plan of attack. And security also has their DNS. Seems to, well, their DNS might be a possibility in between security and GoDaddy, and wreaking havoc with their DNS and maybe taking them out of service. So something to think about from that standpoint.
Mike, they're a cloud WAF.
Yeah, they're a cloud WAF, but cloud WAFs are still can have their issues.
Oh, I know. You sold one. I remember those days with Breach. But that's what it is. They're a lot like Cloudflare. I've used them myself.
Okay. How'd you find them? Were they pretty good?
Working for an MSP at the time. It was one I identified, and it's got a reasonable price point for a lot of small businesses.
Okay. Yeah, that would make sense based on what all the other things they're doing. So I had a question from Vanessa Singleton. Will you be able to get access to the presentation notes with the web links? If you put your email address into the question box, I will make sure that you get a copy of the presentation. I know that the intent of the ISSA chapter, at least I think I know this, that you're going to, there will be a recording. So Andrew, are you still on?
Yeah, Mike, that's correct. The sessions are recorded and they'll be made available. And I believe there'll be an email sent out to all the attendees that have registered to access those recordings.
Okay. Yeah, I took a class last week. They promised me I'd get a copy of the recording, and I still haven't seen it yet. Hopefully, we'll do better than that from the chapter. Okay, so let's get back on track here. So while I've got this guy here, so this is the OSINT framework that I've mentioned, and it's it's a pretty decent tool. The thing I like is that there are some tools that aren't so good, but and it's been around a while, so I don't know how well it's being maintained. But basically, it gives you username specific search engines. So remember all the trouble we have on, and this is a freebie. There's no charge to using this. All the trouble you always have on finding a username that doesn't, bounce on you. Well, name check is supposed to do that. So these are all the places where I can't use it. Oh, wait a minute. Did I do that right? is it still it's still processing? It's time mom and dad it's nap time. Mom and dad have told the kids to go play on the computer and they can't get everything's running slow. Let's go back to OSINT Framework. I encourage you to take a look at OSINT Framework during a slower time on the internet. But it does have quite a bit. If you're interested in playing in the dark web, it can get you down to some of the clients that are there. Put the DNS ones are kind of good. I like them pretty much. Looking for sinkholes, for black web, email domain validation, URL expanders. So if you want to, if you have a bit.ly short URL, pump it in one of these to get it expanded to the full link. DNSSEC, checking for the DNSSEC status. Some different tools there. But it has a fairly rich list of tools. Some of them good, some of them not so good. Again, it's just somebody tried to put together a reasonable graphic. I definitely like the way this expands, but I encourage you to take a look at it for a good, quick way to get to. So let's see what happens here. Well, they want an IP address. So I do a lot of research on spam and phishing emails, and a lot of times, not so much anymore, but for a good portion of COVID, when it first started up, I saw a lot of IP addresses showing up as violations of SPF rules. So I could go ahead and pop that IP address into this tool and find out if it showed up on an anti-spam database. So not much use for the question we're dealing with now, but it is a nice little tool to have. Okay. One down. So let's get down here to user information. So in the case that you find some users, maybe you found a phone number or email, maybe you found them out on social media. What do you get out of that? So phishing email and business executive compromise, if you find the email. Business executive compromise is, of course, when you get that email from the alleged CEO. Usually it ends up going to people like accounts payable. That's a favorite target of the phishers for that kind of thing, and saying, hey, George, or hey, Sally, can you send a wire transfer to ABC company for $150,000? Signed, your best CEO buddy. And they immediately hop to it. They don't bother to check out of band, call the CEO back saying, oh, by the way, did you send me an email asking me to do a wire transfer? They just go ahead and do it because they want a responsive employee. what happens? The company's out $150,000 bucks. So the hacker is going to use the email addresses that they're able to harvest and use that to formulate these phishing attacks. Also, possible password guessing assistance. Now we're getting more into multi-factor authentication. There for a while it was the password wallet, I think they called it, where they'd pick obtuse details about your background that only you should know, which in some cases for some of us we never knew to begin with. But anyway, they go ahead and give you some questions based on that, and if you answer the questions correctly, then it lets you through. The other thing that the social media does is social engineering strategies. This particular one, let's see if I can find him again. Let's do that.
Mike, I just wanted to say we're nearing the top of the hour, but you're free to go long if you'd like. And the mics have been opened up. If you want to take a few questions, you can do that as well. There's no rush to shut down the meeting. So if folks want to stay and you want to continue on for a bit, no problem with that.
Okay, thank you for the reminder. Okay, so I know if you guys have additional sessions you want to get ready for, that's fine. I'll go ahead and continue talking here for a minute if you're interested. And I'll definitely be sending out, if I've got your email address, I'll send out the PowerPoint to you. I think there's a way, yeah, should be able to. No. Okay. I knew I'd go down a rabbit hole on this one.
That's easy to do when you start talking about all these tools that are available out there for this.
This was the one I was looking for. So I don't know whether you guys remember or not. See if I can find that. There it is. So does anybody remember Ashley Madison?
I'm guessing there's a lot of folks that don't want to remember Ashley Madison.
Yeah. So Ashley Madison was, well, let's say that she had one of the oldest professions in the world. And there were a number of high rolling power guys that gave her business. And there was a compromise in her database, like about 36 million compromised. And so that database was leaked. And here's some comments. You can see how many accounts were compromised, about 36 million. My account was compromised. What do I do now? Well, besides changing your password, I'd make sure I didn't fall into the same trap again. How do you know that you're not recording my searches? You don't, but I'm the same person who made the Adobe leaked password checker in 2013, if that lends me any credibility. So even that's one of the OSINT ones. I'm not going to suggest what use that knowledge might be put to, but there's some good tools out here. So let me go back to the PowerPoint here and make sure. So the reverse phone lookup is an interesting one. Verizon used to do a pretty decent job of whether I had to worry about it. But I'm going to plug my cell number in. So as you can see, it's